Hello, everyone. Welcome to the penultimate round of the Superbet Chess Classic in Romania. All right, we only have one decisive match in this round, courtesy of Leinier. Domínguez winning over Shakriar Mamedyarov. And Wesley once again drew with Alireza Firuza. We'll get into that later on. Okay, check it out. Mami was white, started with d4. Leinier went for d5, c4, d takes c4. Okay, the early capture on c4, the queen's gambit accepted. Shak went for knight f3. Okay, another line here would be e4 if you want to go into an aggressive line, e4, b5, c a4, and then c6. Where Nakamura also played this as black. Okay, knight into f3, knight into f6, e3, e6. Okay, the solid approach in the queen's gambit. Takes on c4, a6. Of course, the threat is to go for b5. Castles, c5, b3, b5. Tempo on the bishop. Bishop goes back to e2, knight bd7. Bishop b2, bishop b7. Okay, just continue development. White develops its last piece. Black goes to bishop e7, a4. b4 was played here in Wesley Sau's game against Bogdan. Wesley went for b takes a4. And white can go here, rook takes a4. Right, b4 was played by Leinier. Okay, rook c1, rook c8, knight into e5, as you take d4, rook takes c8, a series of exchange, takes, castles, queen a1. All right, battery on the g7 pawn. Bishop f6, exchanging the dark square bishop. Knight into c4, queen c7. Okay, we are in the first critical part of the game. Okay, here Mamedyarov played the logical rook d1 move, but here I'd like white to go a5 to fix that weakness on a6, yes, and this knight on c4 can actually go b6 later in the game. And that a5 pawn will be very dangerous for black because that's a potential pass pawn. That's 3 squares away from promotion. Okay, a line here would be bishop to d5, for example. You take on f6, take on f6. Now you have knight b6. If the opponent captures on b3, then you go rook b1. If bishop goes back, then rook b4, right? Again, the pressure on a6 with that bishop on e2. Rook d1 was played by Mami. Okay, bishop d5, takes. Now, what's the difference? Now, if you go a5 here, late, black can take the e4 square, all right? Knight goes into e4, all right? And potentially the knight can go c3. So Mami had to play f3 to stop knight e4. Knight goes to d7. e4 this time. Okay, let's take a look at a5 once again. If you go a5, there is knight c5 now. Right, so that was one move too late. Okay, e4 takes on c4. A battle between the bishop and the knight. Two minor pieces. Yeah, takes a5, queen d4. White has centralized, control the d file. But black is just fine because of that strong knight on e5, the centralized knight. Look at the knight, the scope of the knight. Yep. Okay, so the bishop went back to e2, h6, king safety, luft. Okay, escape square for the king. g3. Now, if white goes f4 here, that pawn becomes a target with knight g6, g3, e5. And if you capture, for example, on e5, this centralized knight, you have an isolated pawn on e4, and black should be better here. So g3 was played, now g5, queen into e3, rook c8. Black now has this counter play on the c file. The threat would be queen c5 or queen c3. b3 is a weak pawn, yeah? The b3 pawn is a weak pawn. Okay, f4 takes, knight into g6, f5 takes, the process of elimination. Knight into f4, bishop c4, king h7. King is safe with a pawn in front or beside it. Okay, especially with a pawn in front. King should always be behind a pawn, not on an open file, or else it will be vulnerable like this king. Yeah, it's on the open g file. White has to be careful. Queen f3, rook g8, king h1, h5. Okay. Pawn into h3. White also tries to secure that square for the king. Rook g5 threatens, threatens rook takes f5 here. Rook to f1, attacking the knight, knight g2. That was the only square for the knight, yeah? Knight on g2, now he can transfer to h4. So queen e4, Mamedyarov stops this knight h4. He's trying to take the knight with rook f2 and trapping the knight with rook f2. But black has rook g3. Here, Mami went for rook f3. You cannot play rook f2 here because the knight can go e3, right? The rook protects. That was the point of rook g3. So rook f3 takes. Knight goes back to f4, protecting the important h5 pawn. Queen e4. I don't know why Mamedyarov doesn't like to take this pawn on f7, okay? If black takes the bishop, for example, queen takes f4, queen takes b3, at least white has a draw. Yeah, you can go for perpetual here with some queen c7 ideas. Yeah. Okay, queen e4 is trying for the win, but unfortunately, this was the decisive mistake of the game. It's hard to imagine that queen e4 loses on the spot, yeah? King g7 was played by black here. Even knight takes h3 is also winning. Right? If let's say you go f6, just king h6. The king is safe, by the way. Because if you play queen e3 check, for example, just knight f4 back. Yeah? And if you go battery with bishop d3, there's knight f2, double attack on the king and the queen. The king g7 was winning anyways. Queen d4, just f6. Queen g1 check, king h6. And the final mistake, queen g8. Okay, the pressure was too much here for white to bear, I guess. Queen g3 is still holding, yeah. It can still hold. Although the pressure here with queen c6, you have to go king h2 and queen e4. It's tough for the defender here, yeah. Queen and knight is a better combination than the queen and bishop because the queen and bishop, they just play on the same line sometimes, while queen and knight has different movements. So here, white probably couldn't take this pressure with the queen and the knight. He went for queen g8. Okay, he was hoping for queen f8 or queen h8, but the easy queen e5 wins for black. If you go queen h8, the king will just escape. King g5, you go queen g7, king goes to h4. The pawn on h5 is a shield. It's also protecting the important g4 square, no checkmate. And if you go back to g1 to protect your king, I can capture on h3, no checks. Queen, and knight. So no checks for white. After knight takes h3, and it's winning back. So the end position was queen e5. White gave up. And Domínguez wins his second game of the tournament. Check goes back to the bottom of the standings. Yep. All right. So that was it. That was the penultimate round of the Superbet Chess Classic. Okay, Wesley Saw and Aronan is still leading going into the last round. So we'll see what happens in the last round. Wesley Saw drew with Firuza in this round. So that was it. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for supporting our channel, ChartsMax Chess and ChartsMax Entertainment on Facebook and YouTube. This is Coach Oliver. Stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.